Hi, I'm Will from Tested.
I'm Adam from Tested.
We're here in your cave once again.
We are.
We have a buddy this time.
We have a buddy, and he's been seen in the background of a bunch of the stuff that we've done.
People ask about him all the time.
Oh, they do?
We get a lot of questions about him and his companion.
Okay, well, his companion is going to get much better coverage in a couple months, let's say. I have some work to do on it.
Okay.
But this is my protocol droid.
Human-cyborg relations.
This is C-3PO.
He looks like C-3PO.
Isn't he beautiful?
He's gorgeous. His eyes light up. He's not super articulated. He's more of a statue.
He's a statue. He's in 2 legs, torso, head, and arms. And having moved around with me to 3 different houses, he's kind of beat up. But that's okay. 3PO is generally beat up anyway.
Well, he needs an oil bath and a quick overhaul and bang the dents out.
So there's a good story about the acquisition of this. I'd always wanted a 3PO. I don't want the costume. You've got to be like a very skinny guy, like Anthony Daniels or Doug Jones to fit in one of these.
I mean, if this is the actual size of 3PO in the movies.
Maybe he's a little taller, but yes,
I mean,
effectively.
I understand why you don't see dudes walking around at cons wearing C-3PO armor anymore, because there's no way.
People who do it, it's like a life investment, and I have a lot of respect for them. And some of them actually get work from Lucasfilm doing appearances around the world in those costumes, but they're not cheap to coat, they're hard to make work, they're not super comfortable, and trying to look through lit tunnels of darkness like this, it's like, you know, the wrong end of binoculars.
Just keep smashing into stuff all the time.
People who do troop as 3PO, I have the utmost respect for them.
So this is a plastic resin?
This is a urethane resin casting. Now, I bought this on eBay as a kit.
Okay.
It is probably a casting off a Don Post 3PO statue. Now, Don posted all of these iterations of Star Wars characters, full-size stormtroopers, Boba Fett's, etc. And they're quite expensive if you can find originals. Someone took one, cut it apart, and made a casting of it, and I bought this kit from them, God, at this point, probably 10 years ago, 8 years ago. And it sat around in parts. And then I finally thought, after I'd been doing Mythbusters for a while and I had a little more money, I thought, you know what, it's time to have 3PO coated. It's time to have it. And so the types of coating that you can do when you metallize something is you can either electroplate it, which is what I did for my Rocketeer backpack, and we should cover that at one point.
Okay.
Or you can do what's called vacuum metallization. And vacuum metallization is a process where you take a metal and you heat it to its melting point in a vacuum.
Okay.
And when you do that, it actually, from what I understand, pops and coats sorry, buddy. Coats everything in its vicinity with several micron thick layer of metallic. Most of the time, they vacuum metallize with aluminum, which means that everything comes out with a very aluminum, a kind of a very bright chrome coating, which they then spray, and it's also very volatile. You can just wipe it off with your finger. So you have to spray it with a clear lacquer. And the color is usually given by the lacquer. So if you want gold, you spray it with a gold-colored lacquer.
And how does it look?
It looks fantastic. I mean, it's almost every tchotchke you see that's chrome-plated, that is vacuum metallized and has a color to it, is done that way. And they have tremendous control over all sorts of fine finessing of those colors. This 3PO is vacuum metallized, but not in aluminum.
Okay.
So what happened was I looked around the country for a company that could vacuum metallize things this large. And I found a place, I think called Rare Earth Coatings. It's in the Midwest, and they do things like visors for like space helmets and
like
stuff
Neil
like
Armstrong's
that.
helmet.
Yeah. So when you see the gold on Neil Armstrong's spacesuit, that's real gold. It's actually real gold that you can actually see through because it's so thin. When I sent it to this company and asked them to vacuum metallize it in aluminum, and they gave me a quote of about, the standard price, I think it's about $1,200 or $1,500 to coat something like this.
This is a lot of vacuum metallizing.
Yes, it is.
A lot of C-3PO.
But 2 things happened when it arrived, is that this is all a story told to me by the owner's wife, actually, is that their son loves 2 things in the world. One is Star Wars and the other is Mythbusters. And when this arrived, he kind of went a little nuts in the best way of going nuts, the way I like to go nuts. And he was like, well, we can't coat it because it's not sanded smooth and it won't be a beautiful coating. I knew that. I was planning to do a Tatooine weathered oil stained 3PO.
Okay.
This was not good enough for him. So he spent like weeks, months even, sanding and making everything really, really smooth.
Very smooth.
Then he convinced his dad. I think the way I heard the story is that their uncle owns a gold mine. This sort of thing happens.
Yeah, of course.
And he convinced his dad to actually use gold in the vacuum metallization, which almost never happens. I mean, really, honestly, it's probably like amount of gold that's in my wedding ring, right? It's very little. However, this might be the only actually 24 karat gold plated C-3PO in existence.
That's fantastic.
Yes.
Well, we won't tell anyone.
It's our little secret. Yeah, isn't that a good story?
That's fantastic. Do you know anything about the actual costumes? Like, were they metal? They weren't metal. They were, I assume, resin or something like that.
The actual costumes were several different things. So the arms of the original costume were actually metal.
Okay.
Because that gave the most room inside there. But in terms of doing repeats, they were both 3PO. How do I say this? Back then, in England, there had been a...
You're talking about 1976.
In 1976 in England, when they were making a lot of these things, there was a contraction of the aerospace industry. So the guys that built R2-D2, Norek Engineering, were a bunch of out-of-work aerospace engineers. So the original R2-D2s, there was... more than
I think 7 or 8 of them,
I think
right?
6 of them.
Yeah.
I've worked on a couple of them at ILM. They're like jewels. Everything is welded out. Every detail is welded aluminum. It's airospace engineers. So it's gorgeous.
Welded aluminum
gorgeous.
is amazing.
So the 3PO. I've seen some original 3PO parts. They are in fact metal. The chest is fiberglass, and then it's been vacuum metallized. The shorts, so he can move around, are actually vinyl, hot melt vinyl, and so are the shoes. So he's very worn, and it's a really difficult costume for Anthony Daniels to wear.
I'm sure.
It's hard to see in, hard to move in, you can't sit down. Put straws of soda through the thing once the head is locked on.
You go to the bathroom before you put that thing on, and don't drink for 3 days beforehand.
But it's beautiful. It's a magnificent design. It speaks to Maria from Metropolis. You know, it's one of the great robots, even though it's probably the least realistic as to how a humanoid robot might actually be.
Well, it's the most. It's the robot I always think of when I think of robots first.
Right.
C-3PO and R2-D2 are the things that I think about as robots, and even if they're not realistic, they're super iconic designs and really gorgeous. And I really appreciate you sharing this with us.
Thank you.
This is fantastic.
Absolutely.
So thank you guys much. We'll be back with more from the cave soon.
See you next week.
Bye, guys. I can't imagine wearing this for any extended length of time.
I can't believe I forgot to tell you this. Do you know who we know who wore one of these many, many, many times?
Jamie?
Grant Imahara.
No way!
When we worked at Industrial Light and Magic, Grant Imahara actually was hired to do some of the C-3PO appearances.
Well, he's the right body type.
He's the right
all
body
that stuff.
type, and they built a costume for him that fit him.
Oh, that's awesome.
I think it would still fit him. Grant is in great shape, so I think it would still fit him. And yeah, he had to contractually stay a certain weight for a while to do these appearances. He has a story about being a Man's Chinese Theater for some Walk of Fame, Star of Fame for, I can't remember who it was, but literally like seeing Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman when they were married through the tiny tubes of C-3PO's eyes.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah, so Grant is great. We can bring Grant on and ask him what it's like.
Very good.
All right.
Thanks, Adam.
Thanks.